Sunwell Plateau is a 6-boss raid. When you first enter the raid, kill the trash mob group in this order. First Holy Priest, then Mage, Warlock, Shadow Priest, and then Warrior. CC the Mage right away because they teleport into the raid and will use Frost Nova followed by Arcane Explosion. The next trash mob is a patrolling scout. They run to the nearest protector and touch their Tra-la-la, awakening them. Mind Soothe him and time your attacks to all land at the same time to one-shot him since he is linked to the nearest pack of mobs. Do this correctly and you will reach the first boss, Kalecgos. The Kalecgos fight is against two bosses, Kalecgos and Sathrovarr. If either one reaches 10% health, they both enrage, so it's important to split damage equally between them. Sathrovarr exists only in the Spectral realm. Kalecgos casts Spectral Blast, which does arcane damage in an 8-yard radius around the target, so you'll want to stay loosely spread out. It'll then teleport that target to the Spectral realm and leave behind a portal for other raid members to travel to the Spectral realm. Your raid will assign portal groups beforehand, so pay attention to your raid lead so you know when to click a portal. Portals spawn every 15 to 25 seconds, and you can only stay in the Spectral realm for 60 seconds. Kalecgos also casts Arcane Buffet, dealing arcane damage and applying a stacking debuff increasing arcane damage taken, which lasts for 40 seconds. By going to the Spectral realm for 60 seconds, that gives you enough time to lose this debuff. In a desperate situation, you could also use Ice Block, Divine Shield, and Cloak of Shadows to remove the debuff. Kalecgos is a dragon, so don't stand behind him or in front of him because of Tail Lash and Frost Breath. He also casts Wild Magic randomly. Sathrovarr casts Shadow Bolt Volley, hitting 3 targets, Corrupting Strike causing burst damage, and Curse of Boundless Agony. Decurse this curse sooner than later, since the longer it's up, the more damage it does. When it's decursed, it jumps to a new target. Once both are brought to 1% health, you win the fight, and this loot drops. Brutalis uses Meteor Slash, which does massive fire damage split between targets in front of the caster and increases fire damage taken by 75%. Because of this, you'll want to split your raid into 2 groups like this. Melee is always behind the boss, so they aren't part of either of these groups. Each group will soak 3 Meteor Slashes, and then the tank on the opposite side will taunt after Brutalis uses Stomp. Stomp does physical damage and causes a 50% armor reduction debuff, so that is why the other tank will need to taunt after the Stomp. Stomp also removes the Burn debuff. Burn is cast randomly and does increasing fire damage over 60 seconds. If you get this debuff, break away from your group and make sure you do not get hit by Meteor Slash because you'll probably die. Kill Brutalis before he berserks at 6 minutes, and he drops this loot. Felmist has 2 phases, ground and air. During the ground phase, face Felmist away from the raid because of cleave. You'll want to spread out evenly into 3 groups so priests can mass dispel Gas Nova. Felmist will also cast Encapsulate on a random player, and you need to get away from them ASAP since they will be doing lots of AoE arcane damage to anyone within 20 yards. Healers, pay attention if tanks get the corrosion debuff and keep up with the raid healing caused by noxious fumes. Once Felmist begins the air phase, range DPS continue on the boss, but watch threat to not overtake the tank. If you get targeted by Demonic Vapor, which is a giant green beam, you'll know if you're being targeted. Run away from it. The trail left by the beam creates skeletons, gather them up, and AoE them down. Felmist will cast 2 Demonic Vapors, and then we'll use Fog of Corruption. This is an important one. This covers 1/3 of the area and mind controls permanently anyone caught in it. You must avoid this at all costs. Once Fog of Corruption is used 3 times, Felmist will land, and the ground phase begins again. Rinse and repeat, and you'll have defeated the winged horror Felmist, which drops this loot. Next is a long stretch of trash mobs. If you wipe before you reach the next boss, the mobs will all respawn, so make sure not to wipe. Have a tank lead the way, try to soak the AoE from the exploding imps running at your raid. Face all the mobs away from your raid as they cleave and focus the Mana Fiend first since it's casting Arcane Explosion and draining your raid's mana. Once you get through the trash, you will reach the Eldritch Twins. A good setup for this fight is to have range DPS at the top of the ramp and tank the bosses where they stand below. Sacro Lash needs 2 tanks because of Confounding Blow, which is a 6-second CC used on the tank. When it's used, the other tank taunts. All DPS should be focusing on Sacro Lash first. Alithes uses Blaze, which creates a fire patch on the ground on the tank, which you'll want to move away from. If you get targeted by Conflagration, you need to get away from everyone else within 8 yards. Healers will need to heal that target since they can die from Conflagration, but the target can also use PvP Trinket, Ice Block, or Divine Shield if they're afraid they might die. Alithes also casts a self buff called Pyrogenics, increasing fire damage by 35%. You need to either Spell Steal, Purge, Dispel, or otherwise remove this ASAP. Dark Touched reduces healing effects by 5%, stacking up to 20 times. If you need to remove this, run into a blaze patch on the ground. Flame Touched causes 300 fire damage, stacking up to 20 times, and can be cleared by getting hit by Shadow Nova. If your raid is stacked, getting this cleared off shouldn't be too hard. Also watch out for burst damage caused by Flame Seer, Shadow Images, and Shadow Blades. Once you kill Sacro Lash, Alithes will gain Shadow Nova and will no longer use Conflagration. Make sure to defeat them both before the 6 minutes enrage timer, and you'll get this loot. Muru is a 2-phase encounter. During phase 1, 2 berserkers and 1 mage add will spawn on each side of the room every 60 seconds. The mage add casts Spell Fury, which makes your spells instant cast and deal 50% more damage. You'll want to spell steal that. Group these adds on top of Muru and AoE them down. A Void Sentinel will also spawn near a big portal. The Void Sentinels deal 4,000 shadow damage and an AoE around it every 3 seconds, so tank it away from the raid, but close enough that ranged DPS can burn it down. Once it dies, it will summon Void Spawns, and you'll want to DPS those down immediately. Every 45 seconds, the inner circle of the room will be covered by darkness, dealing shadow damage. Melee will need to move out of that inner ring. It will also summon Dark Fiends. These can all be killed by a single Mass Dispel, so make sure you have a priest on top of that. Once Muru is dead, phase 2 begins. Kill any remaining adds, let the tank build up some threat on Entropius, and spread apart so that multiple players don't get hit by Singularity, which spawns over a player and tosses nearby players around for 500 damage a tick. Move out of darkness patches when they spawn under a random player, and dispel or purge the Dark Fiends that spawn. Heal the raid-wide damage caused by negative energy, which hits more and more players as the fight goes on, and because of that, you'll want to pop all cooldowns for Entropius, because if you don't down him fast enough, your healers will get overwhelmed by negative energy damage, and the raid will wipe. Do this successfully, and he drops this loot. The last boss is Kiljaeden, which has 5 phases. In phase 1, tank the Hand of Deceivers away from each other because they summon imps that do large AoE damage. Ranged and healers stay at least 30 yards away because they cast Shadow Bolt Volley. These mobs can also be stunned in silence, so if you're able to CC lock them, you could just do that and AoE them all down. Phase 2 begins when they're all dead. Spread out to avoid damage from Fire Bloom, tanks will get hit by repeated Soul Flays, and healers need to raid heal the Legion Lightning, which jumps to up to 5 players. Kiljaeden also summons Shield Orbs, which deal damage to the raid, so you'll want to kill them as fast as possible. Once Kiljaeden reaches 85% health, phase 3 begins, and he has 4 new abilities. Sinister Reflection, which spawns 4 copies of a raid member, so the tanks need to group these up and then AoE them down. Shadow Spikes, which is summoning a giant purple spike at a raid member, and when it lands, does damage in 8-yard AoE. It goes to where the raid member was standing at the time of the cast, so you can move away from where it's going to land. Flame Dart Explosion hits everyone for fire damage and applies a move speed slow, but there are orbs scattered around the room that allow you to control a blue dragon with the following abilities. Breath Haste, which grants immunity to effects that reduce movement speed a la that Flame Dart Explosion, and Shield of the Blue, which reduces all damage taken within 10 yards by 95%. Also Blink and Breath Revitalize, which is a health and mana regeneration spell. And the final ability Kiljaeden has is Darkness of 1,000 Souls, which is a raid-wide AoE that will kill everyone unless a blue dragon controlled by a raid member uses Shield of the Blue, and everyone stands within it. You have limited uses of Shield of the Blue, so you need to make sure you have good DPS for this fight. Phase 4 begins at 55% health. The only new spell is Armageddon, which you can tell where it will hit by the Warlock Hellfire spell looking animation. This massive meteor will hit and deal 10,000 damage. There will also be an additional shield orb spawn during this phase. Finally, phase 5 begins at 25% health when Anvina sacrifices herself, stunning Kiljaeden and increasing holy damage taken by 25%. All 4 dragon orbs are empowered and the frequency of Kiljaeden's spells will increase. You need to rush to bring him down before he uses 9 Darkness of 1,000 Souls because you'll run out of Shields of the Blue after that. When you bring the demon down, he drops this loot.